Ladies and gentlemen, dear our honorable visitors, dear representatives of media, we would like to start the US-Ukraine conversation. What's at stake between the US representative of the US Department of State and the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine. I would like to invite the moderator of this panel, Mr. Timofey Milovanov, the president of the Kyiv School of Economics. Thank you.
All right, so it's my pleasure to invite Deputy Secretary Verma and First Deputy Minister of Economy, Alexei Sobolev. Thank you very much, and let's invite. Would you like to give the first remarks?
Can I do it from there?
Yeah, yes, of course. Yes. You can sit in the middle. And Deputy Secretary will make opening remarks. Thank you. Mike would be helpful.
Would
right?
be helpful. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to everyone here today, and especially thanks to the government of Ukraine for bringing together a really impressive group of business leaders, representatives from our partners and allies who share our urgency in supporting Ukraine, and a special word of thanks to the First Deputy Minister, who has been such an invaluable partner, and I've seen him in Washington and in Ukraine and many other cities. And a special thanks to Poland for hosting us. You know, the government and people of Poland have provided tremendous support to Ukraine and to its refugees. And Poland has served as Ukraine's gateway for trade and assistance. Poland understands the fight for freedom from foreign occupation and knows better than most what's at stake in Ukraine's fight for survival. And even amid the conflict, the story of the country's economic strength is not getting the attention it deserves. It bears repeating. Despite Russia's brutal war, Ukraine's economy is alive, it is active, and it continues to beat the odds. Ukraine is rich in natural resources. Its people are leaders in innovation. A victorious, resurgent Ukraine has the potential to be not just the world's breadbasket, but its resource hub, IT back office, and given its energy generation and gas storage capacity, perhaps even the power bank of Europe in the midterm. The private sector understands this. Both American and international businesses have demonstrated confidence in Ukraine's economic resilience, potential, and long-term prospects. That is obvious from the extremely engaged private sector participation here in Warsaw just this week. You see, like we do, that recovery is happening now, and you can see it from the representatives in energy in this room. American and global companies and even delegations from US states like North Carolina, California, and Washington State. Everyone here believes in and wants to invest in this growing economic relationship. And so just look at the facts. One of this conference's sponsors, AmCham Ukraine, has added around 190 companies to its membership since the war began. In the first half of 2024, 25 mergers and acquisition deals were announced in Ukraine for $510 million total, a 32% increase of the total value compared to the same period in 2023. We have a window of opportunity to set Ukraine on a path to realize the potential of its economic future, which can be done while we continue to help Ukraine defend itself on the battlefield, simultaneously ensuring its security and trajectory toward economic prosperity. We must continue to expand air defense protections, work with the Ukraine donor platform to establish a framework for reconstruction, support Ukraine in its fight against corruption and for reform, unlock private capital, and grow the Ukrainian workforce by supporting the return of Ukraine's refugees and getting them, the veterans and others, back to work at home. This is critically important. We must also continue to hold Russia accountable for the damage that they have caused. To that end, as part of a $50 billion G7 commitment, the United States is providing $20 billion in extraordinary revenue acceleration loans to support Ukraine, backed by the profits of immobilized Russian sovereign assets. So the United States is committed to doing our part. We have provided more than $100 billion in assistance since February 2022, and that support continues. The United States is working around the clock to help Ukraine keep the light, heat, water, and power on, committing an additional $825 million into repair, backup generation, and a resilient energy grid. We are also rallying the international community, which has committed over $5 billion to Ukraine's energy sector. And earlier today at this conference, the Development Finance Corporation and Ukrainian insurance company ARX signed a $50 million commitment for a new war risk reinsurance facility. This facility will unlock more than $200 million in new coverage for static assets in Ukraine. The deal, which was brokered by the American insurer Aon and facilitated by the Special Rep's office in DC, will offer coverage for agriculture, retail, and other key business assets, with other new reinsurance facilities in Ukraine on the way. Now, while there may be some uncertainty after last week's U.S. elections, I know the American people stand with Ukraine. We continue to recognize this simple fact. Security enables Ukraine's economy. Economic resilience hardens security. That's why investing in Ukraine's defense and cyber sectors makes both economic and geopolitical sense. Ukraine has so much to offer Western defense, cyber, and future force companies. Since February 2022, the world has marveled at Ukraine's defense and cyber innovation. It's this kind of innovation that is putting Ukraine's defense and cyber companies at the leading edge of modern warfare technology. Over the past 2 years, Ukraine's defense industrial base has expanded more than tenfold, and its cyber sector has established global standards. Just take Brave One, the defense tech cluster accelerator. As the Deputy Prime Minister has said, they are the place where the technology of victories are born. In my last visit to Kyiv in September, I got a glimpse firsthand into the future of defense technology. So the United States is committed to helping Ukraine's defense and cyber industries so they can help win the war, protect the country, attract private sector investment, scale up, become exporters, and contribute to Ukraine's future economic greatness. And with that in mind, I am announcing today that in working with Congress, the United States will provide $100 million in new support to strengthen Ukraine's cybersecurity infrastructure and critical government services, and to build out access to information and communications technology for all Ukrainians. That is a new $100 million commitment. This comprehensive package will bolster Ukraine's whole of government cybersecurity capabilities through technical assistance, workforce development, and the modernization of critical network infrastructure. So let me end with this. Across all of our efforts, our North Star for Ukraine's economic recovery is and remains EU accession and Euro-Atlantic integration. It's worth recalling that Ukraine's desire and drive to be part of the European Union is animating Ukraine's transformation. That goal, EU membership, the single market, is transformative. The EU's ability to provide market access to its 450 million consumers has enormous economic and geopolitical power. And we and our European and international partners and allies, everyone here today in Warsaw, and the monumental capabilities, assets, and determination that you all represent are committed to Ukraine's realization of that goal. Thank you very much. Look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. All right, so I'm going to start with questions to our distinguished panel. There will be, of course, a question about Trump, but it will be a little bit later. So I start with get to reality question. Does it make any sense to talk about rebuilding Ukraine in the midst of the war? Shouldn't we be sending all the money to defense lines? Let's start with Deputy Minister, please.
Which one?
Okay, Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine.
Thank you. I think we tried it in 2023. So there was a period where everybody waited for counteroffensive, and then the war will be over, and it didn't happen that way. And I think there was a consensus this year that we basically wasted some time, like 6 months, maybe 9 months. What we're trying to do right now is to, as I say, like lay down the pipelines for recovery. So build whatever helps after the war, but whatever helps right now. So one of these areas and why this conference, what this conference is about, is attracting investment. So basically, if there are some instruments that work during the wartime, they could be like repurposed or expanded when the war is over. And we need growth now, so we don't know when the war ends. Unfortunately, this is not in the Ukrainian hands. So like we're fighting, but not everything is dependent on us. So which means that there's no need to wait. That's one. And the second, like without strong economy, like it is not possible to sustain Ukraine. So we have to do our share. Basically right now it's 50-50, right? So 50% of costs are shared by our partners, 50% by Ukraine. So the economy is as important as the war.
Yeah, look, I would just say I agree with what the Deputy Minister said, and I think it's hard to separate out security from economics. They are related. Now, I understand because of the conflict, there are some reconstruction efforts that cannot take place. It'll be difficult, but the planning and the activity should be taking place now for that post-war period. And in addition, there is a lot we can do in other parts of the country, and the needs are actually quite significant. In the energy sector, for example, there's a certain urgency. In the defense industrial base, there is a certain urgency that calls for not waiting. The other point I would make is that if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, and again, the minister will know this better than I do, but the economic recovery is actually happening now. It's happening now. As I understand it, GDP grew 5% last year, is on track to grow 3% this year. More than 37,000 new businesses were registered last year. That's an incredible number. Investments were up, I think 17%. Tax revenues were up. So this is also a very positive story. It shows a story of resilience, a story of courage, and a story of what is possible. I take a look at what's happening and what you've done in the agriculture sector with the exports of some 10 million tons of grain and steel and other products. Again, that is happening today. That is not waiting for the conflict. And in fact, Ukraine has exported nearly 100 million tons of goods, a 36% increase than over the same period last year. Again, we can't do everything we want to do, but given this level of progress, the time is now. And you see the interest here in this hall. You see the interest when I talk to the private sector in the United States. Very, very committed to the people of Ukraine and to this economic recovery. And so this is not a situation where we can wait.
Okay, great. So let's talk about corruption in Ukraine. So, yeah, let's do it. Deputy Minister. Yeah, nice, please. You're welcome. Go ahead.
What's the question?
What's the state of the corruption in Ukraine, and what, how much progress has been done during the war? Is it high-level corruption? Is it low-level corruption? Is it true there is corruption? Is perception of the corruption? Farid Zakharia in Kyiv, in Yalta, said that it's the most corrupt country in the world. I completely disagree with that, but nonetheless, what has realistically been done? Yeah, and how does it look from outside?
Yeah, so I'm not the outsider, but I can basically repeat.
I mean outside of corruption.
Of corruption. Okay, then I'm definitely the outsider. So we had a screening in EU quite recently. I think last month. One article was about the corruption, basically like assessing the actual level, what we know about it, like technically to understand. So there is a corruption perception index that's done by the Transparency International, and this is, I think, the only objective measure, or like the biggest objective measure that we have, because like this is a very technically very complicated issue to tackle. So basically, what Ukraine has done over the last 10 years, it's like number 3 democracy that advanced the most over the last 10 years in this corruption perception index. It's just one of the just 20 countries among all the countries in the world across the last 10 years to advance in this index. So basically, what we can say, like as a fact, Ukraine is a leader in corruption fighting. The second fact is like corruption is a complicated issue that like really hard to get over with. And that the last bit is that we still understand that the level of like corruption in Ukraine is unacceptable. And even if we continue this progress that we had over the last 10 years, add 11 points to this index, maybe in the next 10 years we will be like better, but still not better enough as we want us to be. Not enough like as the best anti-corruption country in the world. Why is that? Because like corruption technically is a very complicated issue, and we started really from the low base back in 2013, where Euromaidan started. So we need to understand that and be aware of that. And right now, I think what we also see in the surveys of the businesses, what they say, if you ask them how can the corrupt country is, something like that, so they would say 4.2 out of 5. But then when you ask them, in your sector, have you experienced corruption? They would say like 2.2 out of 5. So the perception that the whole country is like rather bad, but my sector is okayish, I think shows that this is like a lot of this talk about corruption is actually a corruption perception issue. Why? Because yes, indeed, we were in 2013 like a really problematic country on this standpoint. And the last part is when you're fighting corruption, there are a lot of like high-profile court cases where anti-corruption agencies and anti-corruption courts say that this person actually should go to jail for what it did, and it would concern a lot of the like high top officials, right? But this is the aim of the whole anti-corruption effort. So basically, like when you see that, this is good. This shows that the country is getting better. But of course, the perception is, wow, like everybody is corrupt there. So I think this period is going to be kind of like that for some time, before it gets better for obvious reasons, because we're succeeding in fighting corruption. And the last bit is that we have Ukraine plan, we have like EU accession, there are like certain indicators, certain reforms, and we also like with US, there are certain anti-corruption reforms that we needed to fulfill to get the funding, to have good relationships with our partners, and we're basically fulfilling that. So we can look at the last year's track record. We didn't fail any of the indicators that we agreed to, which means that you can look at the documents, understand what Ukraine promises to do next, and be sure, based on the track record of the last 2 years, that Ukraine is going to deliver. And on the previous panel, there was some from our partners. Someone said that during the last 2 years, we did kind of more anti-corruption efforts than during the previous like 5. Maybe I don't agree with the assessment of that, but still it shows that the perception that Ukraine is successfully fighting corruption, I guess, is there, and this is a fact. Thank you.
Maybe I could just add, when we go talk to companies and investors, and we are looking to attract capital and investment into Ukraine, this is one of the top issues, and so it is. If you're looking at one of the factors that outside investors are looking at, this is a key factor for sure. But I'd also say we've actually seen considerable progress in this area, driven by the people of Ukraine, and as the minister said, we saw this reinforced by the opening of official EU accession talks in June, and the 5th IMF review in October. But really, it's driven by the people of Ukraine. I think 8 out of 10 Ukrainians want further reform efforts. I think it's a generational issue. I think the future of Ukraine and EU and the reforms need to make this a reality. Again, as the minister said, we've partnered very closely on this issue. We've supported Ukraine in enacting some 20 business-friendly laws and regulations to create the right conditions for private sector investment. You've passed legislation around asset declaration, anti-monopoly, the Constitutional Court, discipline reform, corporate governance, the Bureau of Economic Security Reform, and most recently, customs reform. So that's very important. Our own State Department Office of Inspector General was in Ukraine last week to ensure the accountability of U.S. assistance. Again, U.S. taxpayers want to know that their money is going to the right place. Together with Ukraine and the UK, we launched the Local Government Integrity Alliance with 22 cities committed to transparency and integrity. Again, just final point, this is part of the reason why Ukrainian citizens are fighting. They want to be free of Putin, of Putinism, and this toxic cocktail of corruption, kleptocracy, and oligarchy. So it's a very, very important subject.
Yeah, so I'm going to abuse my position as a moderator just to give a perspective, because people forget this perspective. When I was in the government, and before that when I was at the board of the central bank, I remember how long it took Ukraine and partners to think about what's the right way of nationalizing private bank. Because Kolomoisky was such a powerful oligarch playing, basically according to his own rules. Then we remember that when President Zelensky came to power, Kolomoisky continued to control some, not private bank, but continued to control some of the state-owned enterprises, and could, including my case, could boss around ministers, and ministers would be getting phone calls from oligarchs. Where is Kolomoisky today? He is arrested, and that was unprecedented. Couldn't even, no one would be able to believe that that's possible, let's say 5-7 years ago. So the progress is immense, and that's not a unique story. And so the infrastructure is there. The perception, of course, is lagging. It is not that threats are not there, but of course, Ukraine's reputation is much worse than the reality currently is, and there is evidence to that. Okay, so I'm going to move to this question about energy resilience and critical infrastructure. And as we are going into winter, we have experienced last 3, maybe, well, 6, 7 weeks relatively uninterrupted, so to speak. And I can't believe that in the 21st century, I'm talking about uninterrupted, that just like over 100 drones a day attacking infrastructure, but we're still not getting long blackouts, at least in some parts of the country. Of course, at the front lines, it's very different. So that is considered to be an okay or good status quo. Are we going to see in the winter the situation where there will be for days no electricity and a major refugee crisis in Europe as a result of that, or not? How ready is critical infrastructure? How is air defense doing? What's the ability to reinforce or rebuild after attacks? How is security? And going back to your point, Secretary, how is security and economy or economic resilience interact? Yeah, maybe we start with you and then go to the minister.
Sure. Look, this is such an important area. We see the Russian strategy, obviously, to go after energy infrastructure. It's a very obvious and transparent and dangerous approach. So we have to be very aggressive in our response and our commitment to defend the energy grid and support the Ukrainian people. So we have surged $825 million for emergency energy funding to fortify power generation, to repair the grid, deploy more passive protection of energy infrastructure, provide backup power options, and restore gas storage facilities. So all these areas are very important. That includes $300 million that Secretary Blinken announced in September. And just give you real practical examples. So the U.S. has deployed thousands of tons of rebar, 200 miles of steel mesh, just to repair and to protect the Ukrainian substations, which are so critical in making sure that energy is transmitted appropriately. Our G7 plus partners announced another $1 billion to repair and strengthen the energy infrastructure. So that's on the government side. I also am really proud of what the private sector is doing. I look at Westinghouse, for example, what they're doing to help free Ukraine from its dependence on Russian nuclear energy control by providing nuclear fuel to support Ukraine's nuclear reactors. Again, many U.S. companies that are located here in this hall are also helping Ukraine build a green energy future, a more renewable future. U.S. companies have signed deals in recent months and over the past year to support wind and solar, which can provide backup capacity. And we want more private investment, and we are providing financing and insurance tools. And again, to help diversify Ukraine's energy mix away from Russia, particularly on gas, U.S. companies are signing contracts to provide U.S. LNG directly to Ukraine. And that's incredibly important. And also, again, our EU partners increasing electricity exports to Ukraine to the maximum capacity, some 2.1 gigawatts. And finally, I'll just say you mentioned air defense. Since March, Russia has launched nine waves of attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. So air defense is a crucial part of our efforts to ensure that Ukraine's energy infrastructure is protected. So this is an area where defense, technology, innovation, finance are all part of the solution. But Minister, over to you.
Yeah, I'll be brief because this is the Ministry of Energy's part, and they're aware of it. We will look at the macro picture, and what we see is that there is an assessment that's done by KSE of the damages. They did it for the half year, and basically the damages to the energy system at the middle of this year was 23 billion against the 8 billion for the same period of the last year. So basically this shows the extent of the attacks and how much we need to rebuild. But then just deploying the issue first is to get the funds, then to get to deploy the funds in such a rush. And I think everybody's doing such a great job. And I was a witness to like some of these calls, meetings, or meeting counterparts in both DC and in Brussels. And they're kind of online on this like energy calls where they trying to assemble like everything to get this like thousands of rebars or whatever, or like generators into Ukraine, canceling the orders for other clients that this generators or this energy equipment was being built to. So this is like a lot of effort there, and from what we understand that kind of there is enough capacity in Ukraine to go through the winter more or less okay. The problem is, of course, we don't know how much like shelling, and the Russians started this attack just today. There was a like big missile attack. We will see what they damage and how the air defense and whatever energy prepared is done. Also on the business side, what's I think the encouraging side. So when we talk to the businesses in the region and ask them, okay, like what do you think about the winter? They said like we're more or less prepared, and I was really surprised. But then, so like there's an estimate that maybe there's around 1 gigawatt of diesel generator capacity in Ukraine right now. So basically, a lot of those companies that are present here, if there's a blackout, they gonna like start the diesel generator. Yes, they're probably gonna be working for a couple of months at a loss, but they will work and they will pay salaries, make products to export them, ship them, etc. So the businesses are prepared, and this is also, I think, a lot of those generator capacity of the gigawatt is provided by our US partners. So like. Yeah, it all depends on the air defense, on Russians, and but I think Ukraine, together with partners, we did like very much.
Thank you. I have a lot of exciting questions, but we don't have time, so I'm gonna go. I'll try to expedite by asking one question to one of you, but so by changing questions. So, is the U.S. It's to you, maybe Secretary? Is the U.S. assistance to support Ukraine's economic recovery too little, too late? What is the United States doing to expedite the process?
No, it's definitely not too little, too late. And I think we've been involved from the very beginning. And as I said, you know, we've had pretty significant commitment and hundreds of billions of dollars of commitment. And again, we have a big few months in front of us too that we intend to work aggressively through the finish line here. And you know, I think the minister would agree that the U.S. has played an incredible leadership role and with our EU partners in galvanizing the international community. We have a lot of work to do remaining in transportation, infrastructure, energy. We have to translate now into durable, bankable projects that deliver for the people of Ukraine. And so we're proud of the record thus far. I look at our support on the military side, it's been unparalleled. Like anything, no country has provided, again, through with our NATO partners. So militarily, economically, politically, we have been there, and we will continue to be there.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So the question to the Minister, to you, has the private sector actually invested in a substantial way in Ukraine during this period?
Good question. So, like what we know, last year's FDI was like 4.3 billion. It includes like around 3 billion of reinvested earnings. Part of it is because you couldn't back then easily move money abroad. But this year, for the first half of the year, the figure of FDI has increased by 20%. which is encouraging, right? So 20% for any kind of business is great marker. But in order to kind of grow GDP bigger than pre-invasion level and then grow GDP to the like average level of our EU neighboring countries, we need not 20% increase, but 20 times increase probably, right? So to have to be able to get through not 4 billion FDI a year, but maybe 20 billion FDI. Ukraine has never done that in the like better times. So it just there is definitely a mismatch between the kind of the need and the actual investment. But then back to your question, has the business invested? Like definitely, the business has invested this year, and I think through this conference, through like discussions there and with the companies, you can feel that it's different from the last year. Basically, the conference is bigger, and a lot of the companies are moving towards like the project and discussing like the exact agreements versus the idea of the recovery and something that was happening last year. So we see that the investments are coming, and also this year we saw like this huge transaction, like the French bought Ukraine telecom sector, which is like the biggest transaction in probably in a decade, which also sends a signal, right? This is one-off, but this is an investment in Ukrainian asset, and like our European partners are kind of ready to take the risks because there are business case there. So I think we're gonna see more of that, like this year and next year, as the instruments come online. Basically, we have Ukraine facility. It just started working, so people are just here, like since September, probably started feeling the money from EU coming to businesses for investment. So next year we're gonna see more of that, and I think the biggest drawback that we hear right now is the pipeline, basically the projects. This is what we're calling to all the businesses to produce kind of bankable, really thought through projects, find partners in US, in Europe, because the funding, it feels like the funding question will kind of solve itself. So there's enough support, enough willingness to solve it. There are enough instruments. So we need more projects. So basically, this is the main limitation on the investment right now from the private sector.
Can I just add that I'm really proud of the role that American companies have played here. I look at Citibank expanding its business 15% again during a conflict period. I look at McDonald's opening up more stores, sourcing 80% of its inputs from within Ukraine. I look at what BlackRock, JP Morgan, Bank of America are all doing to come in with investments. Again, you mentioned the big French deal supported again by American private equity, a big part of it. So I look at, frankly, what Day and Zimmerman are doing on the defense industrial base. We announced again, the Aon reinsurance project. So American companies are in, they are investing, but they are investing there to help the Ukrainian people with its day-to-day needs. So I'm very proud of that record.
Thank you, Secretary. And so that gives me a nice opportunity to ask a Trump question. So what happens to support for Ukraine's security and economy now that Trump has won?
So look, I think it's important to recognize that there is one president and one administration at a time, and the next president doesn't take office until January 20th. Until that time, President Biden and Secretary Blinken, all of us will continue to be working very hard through the last day on our key foreign policy and national security objectives. That's why I'm here today, and we will, as Secretary say, we will run through the finish line. But look, I'd also say there has been broad bicameral support for Ukraine in the Congress. If you look at the April supplemental vote for Ukraine, 70% voting for that package in both chambers of Congress, and that, I think, reflects the will of the American people. It'd be hard for me to think of another issue that would get 70% support of both chambers of Congress. I also think Americans know that our security support has a double return on investment. It helps the people of Ukraine, the defense of Ukraine. Frankly, it also helps the American defense industrial base in some 31 states with 117 production lines currently ongoing to support the people of Ukraine. Again, so I also mentioned that there are 3 states represented here today, at least 3 states, California, North Carolina, Washington State. They're here with private sector delegations. They are known for their IT manufacturing, their green power prowess, and other states are also invested. Just for example, my home state of Pennsylvania just signed a new economic partnership agreement with Zaporizhia in September, again, with companies like Westinghouse, Logistics Plus, Amstead Rail. I mentioned Day and Zimmerman. I happened to be in Scranton, Pennsylvania with President Zelensky when he was there at the manufacturing site, and you saw the incredible support from the workers and the companies. So look, I think the will of the American people is clear, and I know what President Biden's direction is to all of us over these next 2 months.
Thank you very much. So I have a question now for Minister. How will China and the Gulf states participate in Ukraine's economic reconstruction activities?
Neither the China nor the Gulf states. It's hard to talk for them. But what I think like we need is basically the same. We need to have like good bankable projects at scale. Maybe like I wouldn't say for China, that's maybe a separate issue, or some other people in the government dealing with that. But for the Gulf states, we had some discussions, and what Ukraine was like mostly lacking is scale. So like it is really hard to get investment in 10 million projects, in 50 million projects, even in 100 million projects. And there are like not that many 100 million projects in Ukraine, unfortunately. But then kind of bigger sizes would entice interest. So you could deploy more capital from there. There is we feel that there is a willingness, which means that this is exactly what we've all been working for. Like we need to have more capacity in Ukrainian business to do deals, to present bankable projects of a larger size. As I said, like the world will be interested in it, and it's up to us to do that.
Can I add something here, because I think this is really important. I will say that China thus far has not used its relationship with Russia to resolve the situation in Ukraine. And in fact, it has viewed the war as an opportunity to make money by becoming the factory for Russia's war machine. In 2023, Russia imported over $5 billion in sensitive dual-use goods and technology from China. That's a 40% increase from 2022. So China needs to end its provision of dual-use technology to Russia, and it needs to be a constructive partner in the peace process. Now, if you contrast that with, for example, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, they've provided nearly $700 million in aid, supporting Ukraine's efforts to end the war, helping mediate deals for releasing Ukrainian prisoners. And again, these are all important efforts, and I know they could do more, including using the sanctions tool, which is important. So they've had a good story, more to do there, but very concerned about the role that China has played.
Thank you. I have a last question for you, for both of you, and then I'll open the floor. We have time for 2 questions. I'll take 2 questions. Okay, so do you think the Ukraine donor platform could do more to encourage FDI, or are they doing okay? It's a critical question.
So, look, Ukraine donor platform, I think, is it's critical. They launched a business advisory council under U.S. German leadership at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in June 2024. It ensures that businesses have a seat at the table when we think about economic recovery, because again, ultimately this will be private sector driven. We have 3 great American companies, Northrop Grumman, McDonald's, and Logistics Plus in its ranks. And I would say, look, thus far they've exceeded expectations under the chair of Siemens Energy CEO, setting up 4 working groups: security, administration, financing, and insurance, people, and skills. Last month, they created a short-term business travel liability and war risk insurance that uses this dynamic modeling process that is significant improvement. So this UDP and its members are also working with business associations, AmCham Ukraine, AmCham Poland, so very, very important in our view.
Thank you. Minister?
Yeah, I would say that this is a coordination vehicle, right? To coordinate, I don't know, how many, like 15, 20, like a lot of different countries, very complex. So like the coordination mechanism is working quite well. What I think could be done better, so I think the example of this Ukraine facility shows that you can actually crowd in investment, meaning that Ukraine facility, out of those 50 billion, it has this Ukraine investment framework for 9 billion of guarantees and grants. And that allows kind of the businesses to plan, the IFIs to plan, and the whole system start moving to kind of to push everyone to produce projects and to produce like finance vehicles, etc. And we will see next year that they're gonna be also the results immediately, right, from this facility. Like this is done by, and also it allows to have this vehicle that EU countries kind of chip in constantly. It is easier for them than to invent programs, kind of co-finance something together with like general EU Commission. So we also have like G2G agreements with some countries in this type of support and developing like public investment projects, like with France, with Korea. So I think like we could have something similar with US, that it shows that there's a commitment to long-term business support. Then the US business is gonna get like the funding X amount through whatever like DFC maybe or other vehicles that US has. It's gonna galvanize a lot of it. This is our experience from Ukraine facility. And basically, like the other countries that we have that are not part of EU that has this Ukraine facility, and not the US, maybe some others, it would be great if they join this effort. And we have this like long-term business-oriented vehicle that sends the signal to the business that the financing, the de-risking is going to be there because the countries are for long term. So that's I think could be improved.
Thank you. So I'm going to open the floor for questions. Okay, I see 2 questions, and this will be 2 questions. I'll start with you, gentlemen, on my left. Yeah. Can we pass the mic, please? Just 1 second. Is it gonna? Can we get the mic on? Yeah. So is it working?
It's on.
Yeah.
Great. Hi, I'm Konstantin. I'm a reporter for the New York Times based in Ukraine. There's been a lot of questions recently about critical minerals and a cooperation between the US and Ukraine. In fact, I think that this conversation was supposed to start with you signing an agreement on cooperation in critical minerals. What happened with this agreement, and more globally, what happened with this cooperation on critical minerals?
Well, thank you. So, look, when we think about the sectors that are critical, that are at the top of the list when we hear from our Ukrainian partners, so it's generally in 6 areas. It's defense industrial base, it is energy, it is agriculture, transportation and logistics, agriculture, and it's critical minerals and steel. And that reflects the needs that we've heard here. The signing will happen. I think we ran into a bit of a logistical challenge on the signing, but this is a huge area of cooperation for us. Frankly, it reflects, if you look at the work that we've done on critical minerals around the world, this is a huge priority for the State Department, huge priority for the Commerce Department. We are looking to strengthen supply chains, strengthen resilience. The critical minerals that are fueling the green energy revolution, our high-tech boom, again, our national security infrastructure. So this is one of our highest priorities as a country. It is one of our highest areas of emphasis in our relationship, and so I believe that will continue in the months ahead.
Yeah, double that, and what I would add is that critical materials is a big part of the victory plan that our president presented to both, by the way, candidates while he was in Washington, and we're developing like several memorandums on it with different countries, and the US is one of them. So there's definitely going to be an agreement on it.
Okay, thank you, Constant, and thank you, Secretary. Yeah, please.
My name is Victor Perez. I'm an energy expert who has been working in Ukraine for 33 years. I have a suggestion to make with a question. 7 to 8 years ago, the company Chevron was ready to invest in shale gas extraction in western Ukraine in the Alaska shale gas project. This deal collapsed because, well, for many reasons. So you think it's time now to restart this project with a normal Ukrainian government and ask and require from the Ukrainian government that this time it would behave the way it should behave.
Thank you.
Look, I appreciate the suggestion. I'm not aware of why the deal collapsed, but I think the vast majority of this effort here today, I think at least half of our conversation has focused on energy and the need to support multiple sectors of Ukrainian energy, again, from air defense to resilience to green energy to nuclear to just the protecting the basic grid. But your point, I think, is a good one, and take that into account.
Yeah, so what I would say that kind of developing the natural resources of Ukraine is a priority for us. So because we understand that we need to be kind of self-sustainable, autonomous on energy, and that this project, this is one of the critical resources that Ukraine has. It could be like a fuel to Ukraine, there might be enough even to supply to EU, and we need to develop that. Right now, I don't think that there's because of the security situation. Probably this is the biggest issue for such a large-scale project, but we definitely need to develop it.
Thank you. And I'm gonna, we have 3 minutes, so maybe you can spend 90 seconds each for some remarks or some comments.
Sure.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to?
First of all, I'd like to thank our U.S. partners for great cooperation and really flexible and fast the delivery. I think that I hope we send enough signal to the business that this is for real. So this time it is changing. So both the Ukraine is reforming because there's no other way to than becoming member of EU, and US is also real in having more business, more connections to Ukraine through its businesses. So what I would like to encourage Ukrainian businesses here to establish more partnership with the US, because as I said, whatever you need to help to establish those partnerships, eventually the help will be there. So, but we need your kind of effort, and we'll be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, and again, Minister, thank you, and thank you to everyone who came here, and to our organizers and to our moderator. Really appreciate it. This is a critical time for Ukraine's future, its security, its economics, the safety of its people. And so we are absolutely committed. As I said, these next few months for us are essential. And we'll be moving to support, again, transportation, infrastructure, reconstruction efforts. This includes upgrading of Ukraine's EU market border crossings on land, as well as the Black Sea and Danube River ports, renovating the rail segments in EU border areas, enhancing Ukraine's ability to export goods to the European Union. This includes surge capacity to Ukraine's reconstruction framework to turn projects into bankable bankable and deliverable projects on the ground that deliver areas, again, like energy, water and sanitation, telecommunications, transportation, health, agriculture, and education. And again, I mentioned the importance of security. I announced $100 million in cybersecurity today. But last month we committed an additional $100 million to demining efforts. That brings our demining commitment to nearly $300 million. And thanks to our efforts, Ukraine has demined an area nearly the size of Belgium that they've already done. And that's incredibly important. And finally, we've launched a $2 billion Ukraine Defense Enterprise Fund and a defense deal team with our State Department, DOD, and Commerce Departments to support co-production and joint venture deals. Northrop and UDI signed a breakthrough co-production deal, and just last week, Amentum, and I know they're here, signed a new agreement with the Ukraine defense industry. So we are going to keep putting projects on the board that are measurable, identifiable, and have a big security, economic, and human impact.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Let's thank the panelists, thank the audience, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.